So that was Mr. Robinson standing there, emotionless, expressionless. You can see the face of evil as he's hearing these charges read against him: aggravated murder, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, and the death penalty is an option. Greg, you were saying it's so good for the country to see how this proceeds in the courtroom.
Yeah, and this is going to be a learning experience, not just for the people who saw this coming, but for the people who have to reconcile their role in this. You know, he said some hatred can't be negotiated with. Well, where did that belief actually come from? It sounds really familiar. You know, if you designate the other side as Hitlerian or fascist, why would you negotiate with them? We said that many times. This rhetoric has been part of the Democratic media industry complex for the past decade. They believe that they didn't have to debate us because we were deplorable. If you remove, or irredeemable, if you remove debate, the only thing that's left is violence. It's the most regressive act you can imagine. This was the product of mass hysteria that then cemented into a belief. And we need to end it. We can't let another one of these things happen, and that means confronting the people that actually still believe this. I think you do need the death penalty for this, because this could be a sanctioned evil. You see people treating Luigi like a folk hero. Why does that happen? It could happen again. We need mutually assured destruction. If you take somebody's life, we're going to take yours, and this is the time for it. Also, there's an amazing contrast here that gets rid of the both sides argument. After Floyd, you had sanctioned riots for 3 months. You had dozens dead. After this, you had vigils, you have mourning, grief, and justice. You know, we don't label people evil and then sanction their death. You know, our response is through the courts and by the law. Everything flows from that. Conservatives and Republicans have been called square forever because we're so hokey about law. Why didn't we riot? Because we don't like doing that. We inherently believe in law and order, and we expect that in others. So this is the right way to do that. I just want to end on this. His rhetoric, which is derived from the Democrats, has done the Democrats irreparable damage by exempting them from debate. They never had to prove the validity of their ideas. All they had to do was implement them, watch them fail, and then demonize the critics. Now they've reached the end point. This is the end point. They have demonized to a point where an innocent, brilliant man died. But now they also have no policies because they never had to debate. They never had to prove their worth. They have no ideas. They have no meaning. They have no value. They're a soulless whole after relying on this demonizing rhetoric to carry the load of their party. Without it, it's just an empty abyss.
It'd be interesting, Kay, to see how the media covers this trial, or if they cover it at all. Friday night, they didn't even air Erica Kirk's address to the country.
Yeah, they're not covering it well already. It's very difficult to watch and look at this person who is not only an alleged murderer, but who is also a thief. This is allegedly the person who stole a husband and a father from Erica Kirk, from their children, and he stole Charlie from his friends and from the country. And it's very clear watching him and looking at the text messages that he knew exactly what he was doing. This is not an insanity case. This is not a case of mental illness. Based on what he is accused of and the messages we've seen on Discord and the text messages with his roommate, who was also his trans lover, talking about how he was engraving bullets, which brings up another question. I'm sure Paul can talk about this with the obstruction issue and what his roommate and trans lover actually knew about what his plans were. But in terms of your question about the media, we're already seeing, and we've seen this since this happened almost a week ago now, this victimization of the killer. That he somehow had something in his life that justified this, that he didn't like what Charlie Kirk stood for because Charlie was too hateful in his debate on college campuses, and therefore maybe he was somehow justified in taking his life. And you saw today, even ABC calling the text messages between this guy and his roommate trans lover touching, because there was some concern about what might happen to him after he had murdered, allegedly, Charlie Kirk in front of his family and the entire world. And so you are seeing this idea of the media turning him into a martyr. Utah does have the death penalty. They also have a firing squad. And he's not confessing, which means this could take a long time. And you may see him get the Luigi treatment where you have thousands of people online and showing up in person, making this guy the martyr rather than the family man and good American who he stole from the rest of us. So it's their time to make a decision about whether they want to report this honestly or whether they want to turn a monster like this into someone who deserves some kind of praise and sympathy.
Kennedy.
Yeah, and to Katie's point, you can just see the people who've already tried to justify this heinous act. You can just see them getting together to try and raise money for him and try and crowdsource for him to make sure that he's got defense lawyers. And it's reprehensible because the only answer right now is not people in the media or people on social media or professors or teachers falling all over themselves to justify this assassination. The only answer is to come out and say that political violence is wrong, full stop. And words are not violence. You talk about debate, Greg, and how the left has an allergy to debate. And it makes you realize just how powerful the debate was and that tactic was that Charlie Kirk employed on college campuses, and how incredibly necessary that was to make sure that young people there who were being radicalized, who were being propagandized at certain colleges in the country, that at least they had access to ideas, and he was smart about it because he empowered them. He didn't talk at them. He gave them a microphone and invited them to challenge him because they wouldn't debate in political forums, so he had to take the debate to them. And what I truly hope is that college campuses don't act in cowardice and shut down conservative debate and conservative voices and libertarian voices on college campuses, but they welcome it because talking about things in the way Charlie Kirk illustrated is the only way to truly stop right now this violence, this tenor, this climate, and move towards something that looks more like desperately needed rationalization. Or rationality, I should say. We've had enough rationalizations. We need rational thought and critical thinking back on college campuses, in debate, and in society.
We sure do. Paul, you heard a lot of those charges read, and we've seen a lot of evidence so far, especially these communications between him and his trans boyfriend.
Yeah, so what the prosecutor did there, not only in New York it would be an indictment, federally it would be an indictment. This is an information, but I bring it up just because this is what would be called a speaking indictment. Why does that matter? Because it's a situation where you lay out a lot of the facts as you're going to allege them. So you're not just impugning the accused, but you're putting out facts that are known to you that are going to be the basis of your case. In this case, they chose to do that, in my opinion, because they wanted to tamp down some of the lunacy that we're all seeing going around online relative to conspiracy theories, who he was. This guy is actually a right-winger, blah, blah, blah. Very clearly, he was putting out where this guy was coming from. I think we can put to bed any questions about motive at this point. A couple of other things that jumped out at me. The charging of the potential witness tampering and the destruction of evidence, that's leverage over the roommate. Because if you remember, in the initial thing we saw this morning, when the prosecutor gave the hearing, the press conference, talked about the fact that the note was under the dashboard and the police were able to retrieve a photograph of the note. My understanding is they don't have the note. Where'd the note go? Well, who would have destroyed it? Likely the roommate, right? So you're starting to see some of the things, some of the contours of what's going on here. The investigators want that roommate on their side. They want that person right where that person is right now, which is, don't charge me, I'll tell you whatever you want to know. And that seems pretty clear from the conversations, the text messages that we've seen. So a lot of that now is being clarified by that press conference, and now, as of course, by this whole thing here, where we got the official charges, which say that it's aggravated murder because he put others in danger other than Charlie. The basis of that is going to be a long-range shot could have hit somebody else, or, and forgive me for being graphic here, but the round at that short a distance, a high-powered round likely goes through. And my understanding is that's exactly what happened. That's not going to be hard to hold up. Aggravated murder is going to go. Let me just close with one other thing that jumped out at me. Again, trying to tease out some subtleties here. The judge called him indigent. All right, if you caught that, right? All right. I want to know what this guy, how he was keeping heart and soul together. All right. He's living with an aspiring gamer who's transitioning, right? Which costs a lot of money, by the way. That's all kinds of hormone treatments, all this other stuff. He's going to school. Let me ask, are there student loans? Would anybody be shocked to find out that they have $200,000 in student loans and that's how they're managing to live at home doing nothing more than plugging themselves into the internet, into a progressive ecosystem that creates this kind of stuff? You know, this is not that fringe. When you consider, they always, the left's going to come back with, oh, Donald Trump says outrageous things. Donald Trump doesn't advocate for killing anybody. Last I checked, the guy who almost became the vice president, Waltz, literally said after 2 attempts on Donald Trump's life, oh, I woke up today, he's still alive, huh? Something to that effect. You know, this is far more inside the mainstream, the Democratic Party, than anything on the right. So the both sidesism doesn't work. And to me, this guy, he's not even human. This guy is an excremental byproduct of a progressive ecosystem that has been countenanced and funded by some of the worst enemies of the American experiment.
In some parts of the country, they call him a dingleberry. All right, Jesse, very good.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.